A stakeholder is an individual or group who has an interest in what the organization does, or who affects or can be affected by the organization's action. In other words, stakeholders have the influence on an organization's behavior or actions. And many people, they are confused between stakeholder and shareholder. They are not the same. So in this chapter, we will discuss different types or different groups of stakeholders. And for shareholders, it is only falling into one category of stakeholder. So stakeholders can be broadly categorized into three groups: internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and connected stakeholders. First, we go to the topic on internal stakeholders. For internal stakeholders, these are any stakeholders that are within the organization itself. So the key words here is within the organization itself. In other words, any people or person outside or not within the organization, we cannot say they are internal stakeholders. And those internal stakeholders' objectives are likely to have a strong influence on how the organization is running. We have three types of stakeholders under the internal stakeholders classification. First, the employees, and then its managers and directors. For employees, their concerns are mainly include pay, the salary, for example, the working conditions and job securities. And for managers and directors, maybe they have the similar objective or expectation as employees, for example, job security, for example, the salary. However, they have a bit slightly different as compared to the employees itself. Many managers, they have the bonus to be paid by the end of a financial year or in the mid of financial year. And how the bonus is calculated or computed is based on the performance of the company, for example, the sales performance, so that if the growth is going to occur, the managers will want to increase their profits as well as their bonus. For employees, the workers are mainly concerning about their pay, the basic salary maybe, the working conditions. Once they are assigned more responsibility, they would like to have their salary increase for it. And next, we move on to external stakeholders. It is the second category or classification under stakeholders, and external stakeholders tend to not have a direct link to the organization, but can influence or be influenced by its activities. It includes several types of external stakeholders, like community. For example, the general public. The general public can be a stakeholder, especially if their lives are affected by an organization's decisions or activities. Say, a factory located in a town, and the pollutants emitted by the factory will affect the people in the neighborhood within the town. The community is affected. They are external stakeholders because, first of all, they are not within the organization, and they are just the neighbor of the factory. So they have the external external stakeholders for the organization or for the factory in this case. The second type of external stakeholders is environmental groups. These groups expect the organization does not harm the external environment, like the Greenpeace, like many environmental group. An example is if an airport wants to build a new runway, the environmental pressure groups or the environmental groups may stage a sit-in to make the decisions on whether the new runway should be built. Because when a new runway built for the airport, the town nearby will be affected by the noise from the plane or any other pollutants. The third type of external stakeholders may be the government. What the government would like to see is the company activities are central to the success of the economy, saying the company or the organization can provide more jobs opportunity to the town center people or to the people nearby. And when the company can make profit, it can pay taxes to the government or to the local community, to the local council. Another type of concern under the government category is legislation. The company has to comply all the regulations and rules by the government, no matter it's national government or local law. It has to meet the standard for health, safety, and other environmental issues as well. The actions by companies could break the law, and governments therefore control what organizations can do. So in this case, government is one of the external stakeholders. The last piece of this external stakeholders puzzle is trade unions. Trade unions, they would like taking an active part in the decision-making process with an organization. If a department is to be closed, the union will want to be consulted, and there should be a scheme in place to help the employees find alternative employment. So here in the case, trade unions is one of the external stakeholders of an organization because they are linked to the employees within it. The last classification of stakeholders is connected stakeholders. The connected stakeholders either invest in or have dealings with the firm. One of the examples is shareholder. Shareholders, they invest the money in a company or an organization. They expect steady flow of income, for example, the dividends paid by their organization, and maybe the capital growth and the continuation of the business as well. If the capital is required for growth, the shareholders will expect a rise in the dividend return maybe in some years later. So they are connected with their organization. Next, customer. Customer is one of the connected stakeholders of an organization. Customer satisfaction, for example, needs to be achieved through providing value for money products and services, excellent quality to meet customers' expectations, and any attempts to increase the quality and the price may lead the customer to dissatisfy of the company or the products. So a company or an organization has to manage customers' expectation on its product quality or service quality and the pricing. Next, supplier. What does the suppliers want? It wants the payment promptly. It means that the supplier supply the goods to an organization or to a company. It expects the company can pay the bill within an agreed period of time. If a decision is made to delay the payment to suppliers, maybe the purpose is to ease the cash flow problem, then the suppliers, or all existing suppliers are not happy, and they may cease supplying goods to their organization or company. The last connected stakeholders here is the finance provider. An organization is expected to have ability to repay the finance, including interest, security of investment, or repaying the principal of a loan, whatever, to the finance providers. If, for example, a firm or a company has the problem to repay the loan or the interest, the finance providers will stop the financing to a company, and it hurts the ability to generate cash as well. Before moving to the next topic, other method, here the difference between connected stakeholders and external stakeholders is one thing. For connected stakeholders, they have the contractual arrangement or contractual agreement with the organization. For example, the shareholders, the suppliers, the customers, they have the contract binding between the connected stakeholders and the organization. However, for external stakeholders, they don't have any agreement or contractual relationship with the organization. So it is the main difference between external stakeholders and connected stakeholders. We move on to talk about other method of classification. The primary and secondary stakeholders. It is a different method of categorizing stakeholders. As I just mentioned, it is based on whether or not they have a contractual relationship with the organization. As I mentioned before, the difference between external stakeholders and connected stakeholders is the contractual relationship. And here, we focus on the primary and secondary stakeholders on the differences in contractual relationship. For primary stakeholders, they are those that have a contractual relationship, for instance, employees, directors, shareholders. In fact, any stakeholders who falls into a connected or internal categories, which are examined above, should be classified as primary stakeholders because they have the direct contract with the organization. Next, secondary stakeholders. They are the parties that have an interest in the organization but have no contractual link, such as the public, government maybe. Any stakeholders in the external category would fall into this group. So to make it simple, primary and secondary stakeholders is those stakeholders with contractual relationship or without any contractual relationship with an organization.